Sunday mornings used to feel like rituals. Lazy ones, coffee brewing while Lauren shuffled around in her robe, barefoot, humming something soft and tuneless. We'd split the paper, argue over crossword clues, and fall into rhythms that made the whole world feel settled. Predictable. Safe. But that morning was a little too quiet. She was already dressed by the time I got downstairs, heels clicking on the tile, purse already slung over her shoulder. I stopped in the kitchen, holding my coffee mug, blinking like I had walked into a scene meant for someone else. She wore a midnight blue dress I'd never seen before. Not the casual kind she usually threw on for errands or brunch, but something more considered. Slim fit. Clean lines. She looked beautiful. Too beautiful. Early meeting? I asked, trying not to sound suspicious. Trying not to feel suspicious. Yeah, she said quickly without meeting my eyes. Just some new project stuff. My partner's only in town for the weekend, so we're trying to hash things out before Monday. I nodded. I wanted to believe her. I always wanted to believe her. As I grabbed my keys, I noticed her perfume, the one she only wore to formal events. I remembered teasing her about it once, saying it smelled like secrets and champagne. Now, it just smelled out of place. Like someone had set the table with fine china to eat takeout. She kept glancing at her phone the whole drive downtown. I watched her from the corner of my eye as she typed out messages, smiling faintly at whatever came back. When she noticed me looking, she locked the screen. You don't have to drop me off, you know, she said. I could have Ubered. I know, I replied. Just figured it's been a while since I got to drive you anywhere. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The co-working space she mentioned was in one of those trendy downtown buildings, all glass and metal, with a rooftop view and a cafe that charged $6 for tea. I pulled up to the curb and she was out of the car before I had time to put it in park. Love you, she said, leaning in for a quick kiss. It was automatic, rushed, like she was already somewhere else. Love you too, I said to the passenger seat after the door closed. I didn't think too much of it at first. Or maybe I did, but I told myself not to. I trusted her. We'd been through worse than a strange Sunday. Still, the hours dragged. I wandered through Target, filled the cart with things we didn't need, then emptied it again. I went home and vacuumed the living room twice. Eventually, I gave up and sat on the couch, scrolling aimlessly through Instagram stories. That's when I saw her. It was a 10-second clip from a rooftop party posted by one of those mutual acquaintances we never see in person but somehow still follow. I almost skipped past it. But then there she was. My wife. Standing with a drink in one hand, laughing. Her head tilted slightly like it always did when she was trying to hear over music. Next to her stood a man I didn't recognize. Tall. Clean cut. A little too close. His arm was wrapped around her waist like it had every right to be there. And she didn't move. Didn't pull away. She leaned into it. I watched the clip 5 times. 10. Every time hoping I'd imagined it. That the lighting was weird. That the angle was off. But there was no mistaking her face, her dress, or the way her body fit into his like they'd done it before. I took a screenshot *T and sent it to her. No caption. Just the image. She replied within a minute. That's just Noah, my old college buddy. Don't be weird, Carter. You're acting controlling. Controlling? I stared at her message for a long time. Something inside me stilled like water freezing mid-pour. She didn't ask where I saw the video or seem surprised that she'd been caught. No embarrassment. No remorse. Just immediate deflection, as if my reaction was the problem, not what I'd seen. I didn't respond. She came home around 6, holding a white to-go bag from that overpriced sushi place she never used to like. Said her meeting ran late, but she brought dinner to make up for it. Kissed me on the cheek. Told me I looked tired. I nodded. Smiled even. Played the role of the calm husband. She didn't mention the video. Neither did I. We ate on the couch. Watched some forgettable show. Laughed at the right parts. When she leaned her head on my shoulder, I let her. But something had shifted. I don't know how else to put it. It was like hearing a familiar song and realizing a single note was wrong, but once you heard it, you couldn't unhear it. That's what it felt like. One broken note echoing in every quiet moment. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to her breathe, wondering who Noah really was. I didn't know his last name. Didn't know where they went to school together. He'd never come up before. Not in 10 years of marriage. Not once. And yet, there he was, hands on her waist like it was muscle memory. I told myself I was being paranoid. That one video didn't mean anything. But deep down, I knew. You don't lean into someone like that unless it's familiar. Unless it's safe. Unless it's already something. I think that was the moment I stopped telling myself stories. The kind of stories you build to keep a marriage stitched together. Stories like, she'd never do that, or she just needs space, or everything is fine, because everything wasn't fine, and hadn't been for a while. I just hadn't wanted to see it. But now I had. And once you see it, really see it, you can't go back. You don't unsee the truth. After that Sunday, something inside me went quiet. Not numb exactly, more like focused. I wasn't angry, at least not in the way you'd expect. There were no shouting matches, no accusations hurled in the dark. It was worse than that. I started watching. Not in a creepy, possessive way. More like a man flipping through an old photo album and noticing, for the first time, all the people who weren't smiling. All the little shadows he never caught the first time around. Lauren started traveling more for work. That wasn't new, exactly. She was a project manager for a regional marketing firm, and her job had always required the occasional overnight. But suddenly, the trips came more frequently. She stopped mentioning the destinations, started giving vague timelines. A few days, she'd say, or back before the weekend, without ever clarifying where there was. First, I chalked it up to stress. Maybe they had new clients. Maybe she was just tired. But then came the changes I couldn't explain away. She stopped using our shared calendar, the one we'd relied on for years to keep track of everything from birthdays to dental cleanings. When I asked why a 3-day stay in Chicago hadn't shown up, she laughed and said she must have forgotten. You know how scatterbrained I get when I'm rushing. But Lauren wasn't scatterbrained. She was calculated. She remembered everyone's birthday, knew the exact date we bought our first couch, even what song played on the radio during our first real road trip. She didn't forget things. Not by accident. She changed the passcode on her phone, too. I noticed it one evening while we were cooking. Her screen lit up with a message, just a first name and a winking emoji. But when I glanced over, she tilted the screen away and tapped in a new code I didn't recognize. When I asked about it later, she looked genuinely offended. It's just privacy, Carter. Doesn't mean I'm hiding anything. God, can I have one thing that's mine? I didn't push. I wish I had. Instead, I nodded, gave her a half-hearted smile, and poured another glass of wine. But something inside me curled in on itself. Then there was the photo. I didn't notice it was gone until weeks later. We'd had a framed sh*T of us on her phone's lock screen, one from a cabin trip 2 winters ago. I remember because it was the last time we felt genuinely close. No distractions, no tension, just her cold fingers wrapping around mine as we watched snow fall outside a foggy window. One morning, while she was in the shower, I saw the phone light up. The photo was gone. In its place was a dark, artsy sh*T of city lights, generic and impersonal, like she was trying to erase me from the frame. When I brought it up, she shrugged. I'm just trying to look more professional. That picture was too couple Y. Too couple Y. It felt like a scratch across the lens of a life I thought we were still living together. I kept noticing little things. She took calls in the bathroom now, even when she was home, always with the door closed. Sometimes I'd hear her laugh in that low, soft way she reserved for private jokes. Other times she was whispering, barely audible over the hum of the fan. When I'd ask who it was, she'd dismiss it. Just work stuff. Every call was just work stuff. Even her body language shifted. There was a new distance in her touch. We still kissed goodnight, but her lips were colder. Her hugs felt like obligations. There were no more long talks in bed, no more shared articles or late-night theories about TV characters. It was as if we were living parallel lives, close enough to touch, but miles apart in every meaningful way. I started driving her car when mine needed new tires. That's when I found it. A coffee cup in the passenger side door, still warm when I got in. The name on the side wasn't hers, or mine, or anyone I recognized. Wes. It was written in bold black Sharpie, underlined twice, like someone had done it with a flourish. And the drink wasn't hers either. She always ordered black coffee, no frills. This was a caramel mocha, half CAF extra whip. The kind of drink that told a story. When I asked her about it, she laughed it off. Must have been the barista. You know how they mess things up. "But your name's Lauren," I said. She shrugged. Maybe it was the guy before me in line. Who knows? I didn't even notice. I let it go. I always let it go. But I didn't forget. I started making mental notes, little observations, things she probably didn't think I'd notice. She stopped wearing her wedding ring on trips. "My finger gets swollen when I fly," she claimed. But somehow she never had that issue before. There were moments she came home smelling different too. Not just new perfumes, but other people, like she'd walked through a cologne cloud and stood in it a little too long. Or the faint scent of cigar smoke on her coat when she didn't smoke and none of her friends did either. I became a collector of oddities. A forgotten scarf in the back seat that wasn't hers. A receipt from a boutique hotel in the glove box. When I asked about it, she said she had to meet a client there for brunch. They were out of town. It was easier for them. But brunch wasn't on the receipt. It was a room. For 2 nights. A deluxe king with late checkout. I didn't say a word. That was the hardest part, how quiet it all was. There wasn't a big confrontation or an explosive moment of truth. Just small, persistent betrayals that chipped away at everything we built. No fire, no wreckage. Just rot. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Part of me was still clinging to the version of our life where this could be explained. Where it was just a misunderstanding or a rough patch or a season we'd grow out of. But the truth was starting to show itself in the spaces between her words. In the way she started texting with her phone held close to her chest. In the new lingerie I found still wrapped in tissue paper never worn for me. In the way she smiled more easily for strangers than she did for me. I wasn't stupid. I knew the shape of something unraveling. But I didn't move. Not yet. Because you don't abandon the house the first time a floorboard creaks. You listen. You wait. You test your weight on every step. Until the whole thing caves in under you. And maybe, just maybe, you fall through on purpose. I don't remember making the decision. 1 minute I was at work, mindlessly flipping through spreadsheets and emails I couldn't focus on. The next, I was grabbing my keys, telling my assistant I had a personal emergency and stepping into the late afternoon sun like it might burn the lie I'd been living clean off my skin. Lauren was supposed to be in Milwaukee for a client pitch. She had packed the night before like it was any other trip, organized, efficient, only mildly annoyed when I offered to drive her to the airport. "I've got it handled," she'd said, tossing her suitcase in the trunk with practiced ease. "It's just 2 nights. But I hadn't seen a boarding pass. No flight confirmation. No usual business call prep. Just a last-minute text, staying at the Norwood Hotel, rooming solo. "We'll call you later. Love you." I hadn't heard her voice since. So now I was driving. Not home. Not to the grocery store or the gym or any of the usual places where life pretended to keep going. I was driving to the Norwood Hotel. It was only an hour outside the city. A boutique spot tucked into the edge of a business district, chic enough for professionals, discreet enough for other things. I had looked it up on my phone that morning, pretending I was just curious. Its reviews mentioned the rooftop bar and the soundproof rooms. I knew I shouldn't have been surprised by the address in her message. But somehow I was. Somehow I kept hoping I'd be wrong. I parked in the back lot, behind a row of black SUVs and luxury sedans. My hands were shaking as I stepped out of the car. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, feel sweat collecting at the back of my neck even though the air was cool. Inside, the lobby smelled like eucalyptus and expensive linen. The receptionist didn't even blink when I asked for her room number. Just tapped a few keys and slid me a card with a polite, "Enjoy your stay, sir." Room 421. The elevator was slow. I counted every ding as it passed each floor, wondering how many people had stood in that same space, bracing for the kind of truth you can't unhear, unsee, unknow. When the doors opened on the 4th floor, I stepped out and walked the long hallway like I was walking to a sentencing. My footsteps were soundless against the thick carpet. I stopped in front of the door and listened. At first, nothing. Then music. Soft. Jazz, maybe. The kind she played during dinner parties to make our place feel grown up. And then laughter. 2 voices. Hers unmistakably. And his low, relaxed, like this was just another night. I stood there frozen. Every instinct screamed for me to walk away. To pretend I hadn't heard it. To go back to the life where I could still lie to myself. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I raised my hand and knocked. Silence. Then footsteps. The door opened halfway. She stood there in a hotel robe, hair damp, holding a wine glass. Her smile faltered the second she saw me. For a beat, we just stared at each other. The hallway between us felt like a canyon. "Carter," she said, voice barely above a whisper. What are you doing here?" I didn't answer. My eyes moved past her. Inside the room, a man was walking across the carpet. Tall, shirtless, towel slung around his neck. He glanced toward the door, saw me, and froze. That was all I needed. There was no confrontation. No yelling. No movie scene meltdown. Just a moment suspended in crystal clarity. My wife. A robe. Another man. The smell of wine and expensive lotion and something that didn't belong to me. I forgot something I said, my voice calm. Too calm. Thought I'd drop it off. She opened her mouth, but I was already walking away. Down the hall. Past the elevator. Down the stairs two at a time like I couldn't get out fast enough. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just felt hollow. Like someone had scooped out my insides and left a quiet, aching space behind. By the time I reached my car, I couldn't feel my hands. I sat there for a long time, engine off, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed once. Then again. I didn't look. I didn't want to see her name on my screen. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Everything I had feared, everything I had tried so hard not to believe, was now real. Not imagined. Not exaggerated. Real. She was sleeping with someone else. And the worst part? I wasn't even surprised. I should have stormed in. Should have demanded answers. Names. Reasons. But in that moment I realized something. I didn't need any of it. I already knew. It wasn't about the other man. Not really. It was about her choices. About how many chances she had to stop, to turn around, to come clean, and how many times she hadn't. This wasn't a slip or a moment of weakness. It was a life she had been quietly living behind mine. And now I was done pretending I didn't see it. I drove back without the radio on. Just the sound of my own breathing and the occasional whisper of wind through the crack in the window. The city blurred past in gray and silver streaks. I didn't think. I just followed the road home. When I walked into our house, it felt different. Like it belonged to someone else. Like everything inside had shifted half an inch to the left, just enough to make the familiar feel foreign. I sat on the couch and stared at the framed photo on the wall. Us in the mountains. Smiling like we had a future. I got up and took it down. Then I sat back down and waited for her call. It came an hour later. Carter, she said, breathless. I didn't expect, look, I know what it looked like, but it's not what you think. It looked like you, I said, with another man. In a robe. In a hotel room you said you were staying in alone. Silence. Please, she said. Can we talk? Face to face? You caught me off guard. I didn't plan for this. No, I said. But you planned for everything else. More silence. Then a soft, desperate, I'm sorry. I hung up. I didn't want to hear it. Not over the phone. Not in person. Not from her. That night, I lay awake in our bed and listened to the emptiness beside me. It was a different kind of silence than before, colder. Final. I didn't know what the next steps would be. I didn't know how to unravel a life that had taken a decade to build. But I knew this much. I wouldn't be the fool who stood by the door waiting for someone who was never really coming home. The door had answered everything. And now all that was left was to walk through the next one. She came home the next day like nothing had changed. That was the part that shook me most, not the hotel, not the towel-wrapped stranger, not even the cold confirmation I'd spent months bracing for. It was the way she walked up the front steps with her purse slung over one shoulder and a to-go latte in her hand, like she'd just come back from a Pilates class or a quick trip to Trader Joe's. No apology. No warning. Just the familiar jingling of her keys against the lock. Except the lock didn't budge. I had changed them that morning. Called a locksmith before sunrise, before my nerves had a chance to argue. The man had asked no questions. He was in and out in under an hour, leaving behind a quiet finality I hadn't realized I was craving. Lauren's key clicked once. Twice. Then silence. She stood there for a moment, probably assuming it was a jam. She tried again, jiggling the handle, knocking gently, 3 precise taps. Like I was just on the other side, waiting. I watched from the kitchen window. Her expression shifted slowly, like a time-lapse of recognition. The latte in her hand tipped slightly, some of it splashing down the side. She knocked again, this time louder. Then she pressed the doorbell. I let it ring. She pulled out her phone. A few seconds later, mine lit up with her name. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked to the front door, unlocked the storm screen, and taped a note to the glass. All further communication will go through legal counsel. Do not contact me directly. That was it. No signature. No accusations. Just a clean severing of ties. Through the glass, I watched her eyes scan the paper. Her lips moved, reading it again, as if a second time might change the meaning. She stepped back, her phone still pressed to her ear. The screen buzzed in my pocket. Again. 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 Then came the texts. At first, they were angry. Accusatory. Are you serious? This is insane. You're being childish. Let me in. Stop acting like a victim. We need to talk like adults. I didn't do anything you haven't done. That last one stunned me. A swing in the dark, desperate to rewrite history. Then came the guilt. Please, Carter. This isn't the way to fix it. We've been through worse. Don't throw everything away over one mistake. I love you. I turned off notifications. She sat on the porch for a long time. Pacing. Sitting. Standing again. She called her sister. Called someone else. I couldn't hear the name, but the way her voice cracked made me think it wasn't who she hoped it would be. Eventually, she left. The sound of her car pulling away didn't bring the relief I expected. Just a quiet emptiness. The kind that settles into furniture, into the grooves of floors you once danced on together. I sat at the dining table, staring at her empty chair. That night, she emailed me. A rambling mix of explanations and contradictions, as if her fingers couldn't keep up with her panic. At one point, she wrote, "He didn't mean anything. It wasn't even about him. I just didn't feel seen anymore." A few lines later, "It's not what you think. We weren't together that way. And then, I made a mistake. But only once. Only once. Except it wasn't." She didn't realize I had saved the hotel receipt. Or the parking ticket from the week before that, timestamped 3 hours away from where she said she'd been. Or the voice message she accidentally left, 30 seconds of muffled giggling and a man's voice calling her baby before she hung up. I archived everything. Not for revenge. Not to hold over her head. Just in case. For clarity. For court. For my own sanity. Over the next few days, she tried every tactic. She emailed mutual friends, subtly painting me as impulsive, unwell. Said I was going through something, that I had overreacted. A few reached out curious. I ignored them. She sent flowers. A huge, dramatic bouquet, red roses, lilies, even one of those overpriced candles we used to light during anniversaries. The card read, "For everything we've been. For everything we still can be." I threw them out. Then came the confession. Or what I assume she thought passed for one. A long message timestamped at 2:14 a.m. A voice memo, actually, like she couldn't bear to type it out. She sounded tired. "Hello. I didn't plan it," she began. "It just happened. I didn't think you'd ever find out. And then when you did, I panicked. I wasn't in love with him. It wasn't about love. It was stupid and selfish and I don't know who I've been lately." She paused. A deep breath. "I miss you. I miss us. I didn't mean to lose everything." But she had. The locks weren't the only thing that changed. I had to. I'd stopped waiting for explanations. Stopped replaying the moment I saw her in that hotel doorway. Stopped wondering if this was salvageable. This wasn't about one affair. It was about erosion. The slow, quiet wearing away of trust, of an asterisk Macy, of safety. You don't rebuild from that. Not when the foundation's gone. She came back to the house 3 more times that week. The second time, she brought a friend. Tried to reason through the screen door while her friend stood behind her, arms folded, casting judgment like confetti. I didn't answer. The third time, she waited in her car for an hour. Just sat there. Parked across the street, lights off, engine running. Watching. Maybe waiting for me to cave. Maybe waiting for the old Carter, the man who forgave too quickly, who said we'll work it out even when he didn't believe it. But he wasn't home. Not anymore. I called my lawyer the next morning. Asked how quickly we could begin proceedings. He didn't sound surprised. That afternoon, I boxed up her things carefully, not cruelly. Labeled everything. Clothes. Jewelry. Books. Even the framed photos I didn't have the heart to destroy. I left the boxes in the garage and sent her a message with pickup instructions. She replied within minutes. "You're really doing this?" "Yes. We're not even going to talk face-to-face?" "We already did. You just weren't listening." Her access was gone, keycards, online accounts, even the Spotify playlist we used to share. I scrubbed every trace. Not out of spite. Out of necessity. She had already walked away from our life. All I'd done was lock the door behind her. It started with a message that didn't sound like her. "For the sake of the children, can we talk? Just lunch. Nothing more. I promise." No guilt-laced begging. No poetic lines about love or redemption. Just one sentence, simple and sterile. I stared at it for a long time, scrolling back through her earlier attempts, angry, pleading, confused, and felt the sharp contrast. She was changing tactics. This time, she was playing the role of the reasonable one. Calm. Controlled. The mother first, woman second persona. A performance, polished and deliberate. But I agreed anyway. Not because I wanted to reconcile. Because I needed to see the next move. I picked the place, a quiet Italian spot near the river, the kind that had cloth napkins and dim lighting even during lunch hours. It wasn't one of our places. No shared memories clinging to the walls. That was intentional. I got there early and asked for a booth near the back, facing the entrance. She arrived 5 minutes late, dressed carefully in something that said, "I'm still me," but toned down enough to not raise alarms. A navy sweater. Subtle lipstick. Hair tucked behind her ears the way she used to do when she wanted to seem composed. She smiled as she slid into the booth across from me. "Thanks for coming," she said. I nodded but didn't offer pleasantries. Let her fill the silence. For a moment we just looked at each other. She studied me like I was a stranger she half recognized. I didn't break the gaze. I wanted her to see that I wasn't the man who had stood outside that hotel room paralyzed by disbelief. That man was gone. "I've missed talking to you," she said softly. I let that hang. "We used to have these long conversations," she continued. "About everything. About nothing. I don't know when we stopped." "When you stopped being honest," I said. She flinched. Just a flicker. But it was there. The waitress came by, dropped off menus, offered water. Lauren ordered a salad and sparkling water. I ordered nothing. "I'm not here to eat," I said after the waitress left. "Just say what you need to say." She exhaled slowly, resting her hands on the table. Her nails were painted, soft pink, carefully done. Not chipped. Not rushed. A sign, I thought, that she'd prepared for this. "I made mistakes," she began, "and I've already apologized. But this isn't about that. This is about the kids. They need both of us. And I don't want them growing up thinking their family was a battlefield." That part stung. Not because she was right, but because she said it like she wasn't the one who lit the match. "I agree," I said. "Which is why I'm working with a lawyer who specializes in peaceful custody mediation. No shouting. No dragging the kids through court." She looked surprised. Maybe she thought I'd still be reactive. Maybe she was hoping for a fight. "That's good," she said, adjusting the napkin in her lap. "I'm glad. I really am." The waitress brought her salad. She thanked her with a smile that felt too smooth, too polished. Like she was trying to show me how composed she was, how in control. "I want to be clear about something," I said, leaning forward slightly. "This lunch doesn't change anything. You're not coming back. We're not repairing this. Whatever version of me you were hoping to talk into forgiving you, that version died in room 421. Her hands froze around the fork. "I know," she said after a beat. "I didn't come here expecting a miracle. I just wanted to talk. Like grown-ups." That word again. Grown-ups. The salad sat untouched. We talked for another 20 minutes, mostly about the kids. School transitions. A few upcoming events. She was careful with her language. "Our daughter. Our son. Never mine. Never yours." I gave her that. It was the one part of her I still believed in. She loved the kids. Just not well. Then, as the check came and the waitress hovered, she slipped it in. "So, I'll probably be staying a little longer in the city this week," she said lightly. "Finishing up a few loose ends. Project stuff. With Noah." She said it like it was casual. Like his name didn't taste like poison in my mouth. I said nothing. She smiled as if she'd expected the silence, as if it proved her point that she could be honest now and I wouldn't flinch. That the storm had passed and we could all just be modern. "I don't want this to feel like I'm hiding anything," she added. "I just thought you should know." I nodded slowly. "You're right," I said. "Thank you for telling me." Relief softened her face. She thought she'd scored something. Respect. Trust. Leverage. The trap had already closed. She didn't know the house was no longer hers to return to. She didn't know the garage keypad had been reset, the Wi-Fi password changed, her name removed from the utility accounts. I'd had her mail redirected. The spare keys gathered and locked away. Her dresser drawers emptied and packed. She thought we were negotiating closure. But I was already finished. After lunch, she walked to her car with the ease of someone who believed she had planted the seeds of reconciliation. A smile played faintly at her lips. The final glance over her shoulder, the casual "talk soon," as she slipped behind the wheel. I didn't answer. Just watched her drive off, taking one last mental snapshot of the woman who used to be my wife. And then I drove home. To an empty porch. To locked doors. To silence that didn't ache the way it used to. Later that evening, around 7:30, I got the text. "Why can't I get in?" Then another. "Carter, what the hell? I left my charger inside. The kids' homework folder. My shoes. Are you serious?" I didn't respond. She called. I let it ring. Eventually, she sent a string of messages, each one more frantic than the last. They bounced from disbelief to fury to desperation. At one point, she tried using guilt. You're punishing me and it's not fair to the kids. But I wasn't punishing her. I was making space. Real space. Space where healing could exist without the shadow of her choices. By midnight, her name stopped appearing on my phone. Just silence. And for once, I welcomed it. The trap wasn't revenge. It was a boundary. A line drawn in stone instead of sand. She had crossed too many already. This was the first one she couldn't. The kids were never supposed to know. That was the plan. Shield them, protect them, let them live in the version of life where adults have quiet conflicts and clean conclusions. But life doesn't work that way. Our son, Ethan, is 15. Quiet. Observant. The kind of kid who doesn't ask a lot of questions because he's already figured out most of the answers. He didn't say much when Lauren stopped coming home at night. Didn't press when her weekend work trips stretched into Mondays. He just adjusted, finished his homework, helped his sister brush her teeth, and watched me with the kind of eyes that made me feel transparent. One evening, after dinner, I found him in the garage shooting hoops into the old plastic rim bolted to the wall. "She's not coming back, is she?" he asked. I paused. "No," I said. "She's not." He nodded once, the ball bouncing between us. Okay. That was it. No breakdown. No questions. Just the quiet acceptance of a kid who had already been carrying the truth for a while. Our daughter Lily is 8. Softer, more sensitive. She asks why the sun sets when it's not done being beautiful. She clings to bedtime stories like they're lifelines. I hadn't told her anything. Not directly. But kids feel what you don't say. She started pulling out old photo albums. Sitting in the corner of her room flipping through pages of vacations, birthdays, Halloween costumes. She'd ask if we could watch home videos and I'd let her, even though the sound of Lauren's laugh in those clips made my stomach turn. Then came the day Lauren showed up at Lily's school. I hadn't known she would. She brought flowers, toys, even cookies for the class. Tried to wrap it all in sunshine and sweetness. Lily didn't run into her arms. She turned her face away. Hid behind her teacher's skirt. Later, her teacher called me. Said Lauren looked heartbroken. Said Lily didn't want to talk about it. That she asked if she could go home early. That night, as I tucked her into bed, she looked at me and asked, "Is Mommy in trouble?" I sat beside her and told the truth as gently as I could. "Mommy made some choices that hurt our family," I said. "And now things are going to be different. But I'm still here. And I always will be." She nodded. Didn't cry. Just pulled the blanket up to her chin. "I like it when it's just us," she whispered. I kissed her forehead. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. 3 weeks later, we sat across from each other in a legal office that smelled like stale coffee and printer ink. A man with wire-rimmed glasses shuffled papers between us, clearing his throat every few minutes, trying to make the whole thing feel procedural. Lauren looked different. Smaller, somehow. Not physically, but in presence. Her eyes didn't dart around the room anymore. She didn't try to touch my hand. She just stared at the divorce papers in front of her, pen in hand. "I reviewed everything," she said. "I'm not going to fight you on custody." It was the one thing we agreed on. The kids would live with me. She'd get weekends, holidays split evenly. She didn't argue. Didn't raise her voice. Just signed each page like she was checking out of a hotel that had stopped feeling like home. When it was over, she gathered her bag, nodded at the lawyer, and turned to leave. Outside, rain had started to fall. Light at first, then steady. I stepped under the awning and watched her walk to her car, shoulders hunched, moving slower than usual. She didn't look back. And I didn't wait for her to. The strange thing was I didn't feel relief. Not exactly. I didn't feel rage either. What I felt was something quieter. Not happiness. Not grief. Closure. I drove home in the rain, windshield wipers thudding in rhythm, and walked into a house that didn't feel haunted anymore. The silence was soft. Honest. The kids were watching a movie in the living room. Lily curled under a blanket. Ethan on the floor, headphones around his neck. They looked up when I entered. I smiled. They smiled back. And just like that, we began again. What waited ahead wasn't perfect. But it was real. And it was ours. And